A mother and her son were playing cards when an officer who had just boarded the train walked over. His berth happened to be right there as well. The officer looked Katya over and kept striking up conversation with gentle warmth. Katya did not seem bothered by it, and a hint of shyness even appeared on her face. The boy sensed that something was different. Before long, a commotion broke out at the other end of the carriage, as if someone's wallet had been stolen. The boy wanted to go see what was happening, but his mother told him to stay where he was. The officer climbed down from his berth to take a look, squeezing past Katya while carefully keeping his distance. Though his gaze was burning with desire, the boy wanted to follow again, but his mother stopped him once more. The boy felt deeply wronged. The officer came over, lifted him into his arms, placed him on his own berth, asked him to guard his pistol, and even put his military cap on the boy's head. The boy had admired soldiers since childhood, so he happily accepted the mission. The officer and Katya then walked through the carriage together. In the crowded aisle, they silently enjoyed every moment of being pressed close to each other. The officer told Katya that his name was Tolyan. Looking at the handsome officer, Katya felt her heart stir and told him that her name was Katya. The two of them quickly became absorbed in each other. The boy played alone, pretending to shoot, when he suddenly saw a soldier standing on an empty train passing in the opposite direction, staring at him with lonely reluctance.
Papa.
It was his instinct, and it was also the first time he had ever seen his father. His father had died in the war before he was born. He looked unbearably sorrowful and desolate. Inside the carriage, however, love was surging, and even the howling Siberian wind could not extinguish the passion between them. After they got off the train, Katya told the boy that they would live with Uncle Tolyan from now on, and that he should call him Dad. World War II had ended 6 years earlier. The Soviet economy, badly damaged by the war, was still struggling. Eventually, they found a small room in an old communal apartment. Several families lived together there. Tolyan told the landlord that he was a soldier. At that time, soldiers were still widely trusted, so the landlord agreed without hesitation. That night, the boy was awakened by a strange sound. It seemed as though someone was hurting his mother. The boy did not understand what was happening and became terrified. Just as he tried to cover his head, he fell from the chair and began shouting in panic. When Katya heard him, she hurried over, picked him up, and comforted him. Tolyan naturally looked completely disappointed. The boy quietly asked his mother what they had been doing.
Он тебя душил.
Katya could not help laughing when she heard the question.
Я слышал.
Afraid that Tolyan might be hurting her, the boy said that he wanted to sleep beside his mother. Tolyan refused. He carried the boy back to the chair, but the boy ran to the bed again. Tolyan lost his temper. He opened the window to frighten the boy and said that if he did not get down, he would throw him outside. Seeing that his mother did not react, the boy immediately lost his courage. He had no choice but to walk back obediently and lie down on the chair to sleep. In the days that followed, Katya was intoxicated by love and often laughed aloud to herself. Years earlier, she had traveled alone while pregnant to visit her husband, only to discover that he had already died in the war 6 months before. Katya gave birth to the boy on the road and named him Sanya. After that, she endured endless hardship, wandering from place to place simply to survive, until she finally met a strong and dependable man like Tolyan. Believing that life finally held hope, Katya felt happier than ever before. Seeing his mother so happy, Sanya instinctively moved closer. He wanted to become part of this new family, but Tolyan pushed him away. Ever since this handsome man appeared, all of Katya's attention had been drawn to him. Sanya became angry. He suddenly rushed forward and clung to his mother's leg, refusing to let her dance. But Katya picked him up without hesitation, put him outside the room, and locked the door. The two adults cared only about being close to each other. Sanya sat outside the door in disappointment. In a daze, he saw his father's figure again, as though the man were searching for them. But when Sanya ran forward to get a clearer look, his father had already disappeared. Sanya had no choice but to go outside and play by himself, only to be bullied by a group of local children. He ran home crying to complain, but Tolyan told him that men did not run home to complain and had to deal with bullies themselves.
Отбейте, да отбейте, как?
Бей, чем попало. Рви зубами. Легай ногами. Ну, чтоб запомнили. Иначе ты не можешь. Закрой.
After running out of the building, Sanya picked up a wooden stick from the ground and went straight back for revenge. Before long, a disturbance broke out outside.
Эй, друг, ну-ка выглянь!
Tolyan opened the window and saw an adult grabbing Sanya, saying that Sanya had hit his child and demanding that Tolyan come down and discipline him. Sanya was terrified and thought he was about to be punished, but the next second, Tolyan struck the man across the nose. Then he smashed the man's bicycle against a pillar and jumped on it until it was ruined. Sanya froze in disbelief. Tolyan warned the man that this was a lesson he would not forget.
Еще раз тронешь, и кадык вырву, и глаза повыдавливаю.
After that, he took Sanya to find the boy who had bullied him. Sanya was too frightened to speak. Seeing how timid he was, Tolyan ordered him to fight back. Like a real father, Tolyan helped Sanya take revenge. When they returned home, Tolyan told Sanya to bring him a belt. Although Sanya was frightened, he obediently handed it over, believing that he was about to be punished. Instead, Tolyan told him that he only wanted to teach him how to become a man. Sanya felt a wave of relief, then moved closer with growing affection and looked at Tolyan with admiration. Tolyan raised his arm and let Sanya feel his muscles, then allowed him to touch the tattoo on his chest and the tiger tattoo on the back of his shoulder. Tolyan told Sanya that the tiger was a symbol of strength and that a man had to be like a tiger so no one would dare bully him. Sanya pointed at the tattoo on Tolyan's chest and asked about it.
А его зачем?
Tolyan solemnly told him that it was Stalin. Sanya wondered whether he had heard correctly. Stalin was a towering figure worshipped across Russia. In an instant, Sanya's eyes filled with admiration. A few days later, Tolyan walked confidently toward the female neighbors with a box of chocolates and handed them out one by one with elegant manners. He also said that he wanted to invite everyone to dinner, all while discreetly touching the actress beside him. At the dinner table, Tolyan politely poured drinks for everyone and sincerely thanked the neighbors. Then he pulled out a stack of circus tickets and invited everyone to attend the weekend performance together. Everyone cheered when they heard the news, and the atmosphere became warm and cheerful. The actress suddenly complained that none of the men had invited her to dance. The moment Tolyan heard this, he stood up and asked her. The two began dancing to the lively music. The actress told Tolyan that she could not attend the circus that weekend because she had to film a scene. Tolyan froze and looked deeply disappointed. Seeing how much the handsome man cared, the actress immediately felt her own emotions stir. Katya nearly exploded with anger when she saw them together. The circus performance that weekend was wonderful, and everyone was completely absorbed. But Tolyan began craving a cigarette and had to leave for a while. When Katya saw him go, she suspected that he had slipped away to meet the actress. So she took Sanya and hurried home. She told her son to wait downstairs, then went up alone. She quietly opened the door, but the room was dark and completely silent. Katya hesitated for a long time before finally gathering the courage to rush into the actress's apartment. To her shock, Tolyan really was there. Katya was both stunned and devastated. Yet Tolyan showed no panic at being discovered and simply kept searching through drawers, collecting valuables, and packing them away. At first, Katya did not understand what was happening and repeatedly asked where the actress was hiding.
Да какая нахрен Олька?
Tolyan answered impatiently while continuing to work without pause. Only then did Katya finally understand. The man she loved was actually a thief pretending to be a soldier. Katya was instantly overwhelmed by sorrow. She begged Tolyan not to do this, but Tolyan told her that taking valuable things was the only way to survive. Those words shook Katya. Even though she knew he was not a good man, she could not bring herself to leave. In the end, she took Sanya and boarded another train with Tolyan. On the train, Sanya wandered around curiously. Tolyan was in a wonderful mood, while Katya remained deeply unsettled. She opened the suitcase and discovered that even the actress's striped shirt had been stolen. Filling her with shame, she threw the shirt directly into Tolyan's face. Tolyan ordered Katya to pick it up and sell it when she had the chance. Katya looked at him with contempt and made a dismissive gesture. Humiliated and furious, Tolyan slapped her across the face. After getting off the train, the three of them arrived in a new city. Tolyan used his identity as a soldier again and quickly rented another room. Then he repeated the same trick, inviting all the neighbors he had befriended to attend a performance. As soon as the show began, Katya slipped away with an excuse. Tolyan was already emptying the neighbors' homes of valuables. In this way, Tolyan traveled from city to city with Katya and Sanya, living comfortably through theft. Then Katya suddenly began laughing uncontrollably. She was mocking herself through her pain. She had believed that she had finally found a respectable man and that she and her son would have someone to depend on. Instead, she had become a thief's partner. Her laughter suddenly turned into uncontrollable sobbing, and she no longer cared about the shocked looks from the other passengers. Not long afterward, they arrived in another city. Just as they were about to leave the station, 3 police officers approached them. Realizing that something was wrong, Tolyan quickly told Katya and Sanya to wait outside while he ran toward the tracks. The 3 officers chased after him, Sanya and his mother waited for a long time before Tolyan finally returned. Tolyan took them to look for an apartment. Sanya was also growing increasingly close to this handsome and masculine stepfather, but the landlord told them that every room was already occupied. The only place they could rent was a cramped and damp basement. Katya spent every day lying in bed, consumed by depression.
Страшно мне, Толик.
Tolyan acted as though it did not matter. Katya immediately became furious and demanded to know why he had not kept his promise to stop stealing. If he continued, she would end up in prison as well. Sanya came over to pick something up, and when Katya tried to stop him, Tolyan shoved her into a cabinet. Seeing his mother being hurt, Sanya panicked and grabbed a knife. Tolyan saw it and immediately advanced toward him step by step. Sanya was forced to retreat. Tolyan then bent down and began speaking calmly to him. He said that to control other people, a man had to be brave enough to act. Knowing that he was no match for Tolyan, Sanya loosened his grip and let the knife fall to the floor. Yet Tolyan did not become angry. He slowly picked up the knife and placed it back in Sanya's hand.
Бей, а не то я ударю.
But Sanya still could not bring himself to use it. The knife fell again, and the terrified boy wet his pants. He looked at Tolyan, burst into humiliated tears, and ran straight to the bathroom. After removing his pants, Sanya twisted them hard to dry them. At that moment, the vision of his father appeared once again and seemed to ask whether Sanya would join the army when he grew up. While Sanya stared in a trance, his father disappeared again. A few days later, Tolyan once again began entertaining the neighbors. It was obvious that he was planning another theft. After sincerely thanking everyone, Tolyan prepared to bring out another stack of tickets.
И по такому случаю...
Цирк не будет.
Katya lost her temper and struck his hand. The blow was hard and painful. Seeing her reaction, Tolyan had no choice but to abandon the idea. He finished his drink in one swallow and walked outside in frustration. His hand had been injured by Katya's blow. At that moment, the beautiful landlady from upstairs came down. Seeing Tolyan smoking gloomily, she walked over. When she noticed that his hand was injured, she invited him into her apartment so she could clean and bandage it. Sanya secretly followed behind them. Watching the two enter the room, Sanya became deeply anxious, afraid that the woman would take Tolyan away. Inside the apartment, Tolyan looked around and realized that the landlady was quite wealthy. As the beautiful woman treated his wound, she spoke to him with unmistakable affection. Tolyan could no longer resist, and the two immediately began kissing. Just as the woman wanted to go further, urgent knocking sounded at the door. She quickly wiped her mouth and went to answer it. Two children told her that Sanya was trapped on the fire escape and could not get down. Tolyan walked to the window and saw Sanya staring at him with a numb and wounded expression. Without saying a word, Tolyan climbed out through the window. He stepped onto the metal ladder and carefully guided Sanya down one rung at a time. Seeing that Sanya was still shaken, Tolyan took him to the bathhouse to calm him down. He gently comforted Sanya and told him that wetting his pants was nothing to be ashamed of because everyone had experienced it. A man had to stay strong.
Можешь хоть 100 раз обоссаться, но победи, понял?
Да.
Молодец.
After they finished bathing, Tolyan began playing cards with several men in the bathhouse. He was caught cheating. Tolyan immediately threw salt into the other man's eyes, leaving him unable to see, then escaped with Sanya. But the moment they stepped outside, they ran into a police patrol. The officers asked Tolyan to show his papers. Tolyan immediately became furious and claimed that he had bled on the front lines while these fools were now trying to push him around. As he spoke, he tore open his collar and revealed the Stalin tattoo on his chest. Seeing that this rough soldier would be difficult to handle, the officers decided not to investigate further and walked away. Tolyan had just taught Sanya another lesson. A few days later, Tolyan invited the beautiful landlady to watch a movie. The landlady sat between them, feeling unbearably awkward. After the film had only been playing for a short time, Tolyan slipped away with another excuse. He then took Sanya to the building below the landlady's apartment and told him to climb the ladder and enter through the window, just as he had done before. Sanya thought Tolyan wanted him to become a thief, but Tolyan told him that they were carrying out a secret mission for Stalin. Sanya was astonished and immediately agreed. After a dangerous climb, the two quickly entered the apartment. Tolyan began searching drawers and cabinets for jewelry and other valuables, but an older woman downstairs heard the noise and threatened to call the police. Tolyan panicked, abandoned the valuables, and hurried outside. Katya also slipped out of the theater with an excuse. Tolyan soon arrived and picked her up. On the road, Katya decided to end their relationship. She said they could not continue living like this and had to choose another path. Her decision was firm and unexpectedly decisive. As Tolyan prepared to leave them, Katya found it almost impossible to let go. She still wanted Tolyan to come with them, but Tolyan refused.
Мне моя жизнь нравится, и другой не надо.
Tolyan crouched down to say goodbye to Sanya and even gave him valuable gold jewelry. The train began moving. Katya kissed Tolyan desperately, unable to bear leaving him behind. Seeing that Tolyan truly intended to abandon both him and his mother, Sanya was devastated. He turned around, threw the gold jewelry violently onto the ground, and ran away in anger. Tolyan told Katya to hurry after Sanya. Then he saw the police and immediately started running. The officers chased him at once. Realizing that he could not escape, Tolyan spun around and threw salt at them, but lost his footing and fell. He was quickly restrained. One of the officers, however, struggled in pain from the salt in his eyes. Katya gave up leaving and went to the police station to plead for Tolyan. The officer told her that the severity of Tolyan's sentence for attacking the police would depend on how badly his colleague had been injured. Katya immediately understood what he meant and rushed to ask Sanya for the gold jewelry, but Sanya no longer had it. Mother and son hurried back to search. They spent the entire night looking beside the tracks and finally found the jewelry by chance. Katya believed that Tolyan could now be saved, but when they returned to the station, a new officer had taken over and refused to bend the law. As a result, Tolyan was sentenced to 7 years. Fortunately, his thefts had not yet been discovered, or the consequences would have been even more serious. Katya and Sanya waited outside the prison to see Tolyan one final time.
Эх, сыночек, сыночек, если б ты тогда не побежал, был бы он сейчас с нами.
Sanya knew that his mother was filled with guilt. At last, the prisoner transfer began. The inmates were brought out one by one and placed into separate prison vehicles. Their relatives stood nearby and shouted messages to them. Finally, Tolyan appeared. Katya screamed his name with all her strength. Just as Tolyan was about to be placed inside the vehicle, Sanya pushed through the crowd and ran directly toward him. It was the first time Sanya had ever called him dad. Without realizing it, he had already accepted Tolyan as his real father. Tolyan had protected him and taught him to be brave. Although Tolyan's stealing had hurt his mother, Sanya did not want him to leave. Tolyan was like an older brother and even more like a mentor. His mother could never replace that role. Only many years later did Sanya realize that after the day he called Tolyan his father, the vision of his real father disappeared forever. He was often terrified by this and believed that he had betrayed his father. Not long after Tolyan was taken away, Katya was admitted to the hospital. She was carrying Tolyan's child, but after overwhelming grief led to a miscarriage. She died and was buried in the wilderness outside the city. In the endless snow, Sanya stood beside his mother's grave and dragged over pieces of abandoned fencing to build a barrier around it. That way, he could protect his mother. From that moment on, Tolyan was the only family Sanya had left. Katya's watch and Tolyan's pistol became his only keepsakes. Several years later, Sanya had grown into a teenager in an orphanage. Every day, he played with the other children along the railway, finding what little happiness they could in a difficult life. Then one day, he suddenly heard a familiar voice singing and froze. He followed the sound. In front of a small tavern, a man was singing while playing an accordion. When Sanya moved closer, he discovered that the man truly was Tolyan. Tolyan now had a beard, but he did not recognize Sanya at all.
И чё?
Я Катин сын. Катю помните?
Какую, Кать?
Ну, в поезде. Ну, с маленьким мальчиком, помните?
Постой, постой, постой. А ее Катей звали?
Sanya's heart sank. He wondered whether 7 years in prison had weakened Tolyan so badly that everything from the past had faded from his memory. Even when Tolyan finally began to remember, his reaction was so distant that it was almost unbelievable. The tavern owner, who was involved with Tolyan, even mistook Sanya for Tolyan's illegitimate son and became jealous.
Так какая жена? Я просто так спросил. Ну дала мне баба в поезде. Делов-то. Ну скажи.
Молчи!
Не сын ты мне, слава богу.
Кобель драл.
Правильно я говорю, да?
Врал бы
Скажи,
меньше.
ты не сын же
Ну
мне.
ты.
Ну смотри, смотри,
Жена.
смотри. Ревнует.
Кобель.
Ревнует она меня. Влюбился в это, знаешь, как пацан.
Я ему доверилась, а он голодранец.
Sanya froze where he stood. He had never imagined that years of unforgettable longing had meant nothing more than a passing memory to this careless man. The warmth that had once felt as solid as a mountain now turned into bitter cold. Sanya looked down and realized that he had wet his pants again. He clutched his head in humiliation and ran away. Tolyan watched him leave in confusion, standing before his mother's grave. Sanya knew that he was now truly an orphan. That night, Tolyan prepared to leave while carrying 2 bags. It was obvious that he had once again stolen valuables, this time from the tavern owner. Sanya quietly followed him to the train. The train began moving. At the moment Tolyan climbed aboard, Sanya raised the gun. What Tolyan had destroyed was not merely a thief's life, but the dignity of Sanya's mother, the trust of a devoted child, and the ruins of a shattered father's love. Perhaps only in his final moment did Tolyan realize that the boy who once wet his pants had finally grown up. I am a movie enthusiast, and I look forward to our next encounter.